Good evening, and welcome to the No Commercial Potential Show here on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and if you're tuning in for the first time, thanks for joining us. I'm happy to say that you found a very positive space here, because on this show we explore the lives of people from around the world, from all walks of life, and from throughout history, who had every reason to believe that their lives would not amount to much, but who are today household, even iconic names. In our first episode, we explored the life and works of the late great Frank Zappa, from whom the name of the show and of my fake band is derived. Early in his career, Zappa sent off samples of his work to various record companies, and one of them wrote back, returning his recordings, saying that while they were frankly in awe of his incredible musical ability and creativity, they sadly felt that his work had no commercial potential whatsoever. The No Commercial Potential banner, however, isn't just a clever band name or an event in one musician's life. It's a metaphor for everyone who took their best shot at greatness, and even just their best shot at goodness within their own lives, and were told, you can't do that, by people purportedly in the know about what can and cannot be done. So this show is about the people who faced down the naysayers, some of whom residing even in their own hearts, and if they didn't always realize their dreams during their lifetimes, left something lasting, beautiful, and important behind them for the rest of us. And welcome back. Last time on the No Commercial Potential show, I sat down with indie musician, author, and fellow traveler in recovery, the incredible Mike Allen. We had some great talk about life, music, recovery, mental health, the universe, and everything. It was such a great talk, in fact, that I couldn't find it in me to cut out much of it. So welcome one, welcome all to part 2 of my wonderful interview with Mike, along with more of his fantastic music and thoughts about music. We left off last time having just heard his song, Remarkably Unremarkable, about significantly, supposedly insignificant things that some people do. In fact, let's hear it again, shall we? You're listening to the No Commercial Potential Show here on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and this is Remarkably Unremarkable by tonight's guest, Mike Allen. That was Remarkably Unremarkable, Modern Day Ode to Significant Insignificance by tonight's guest on the No Commercial Potential Show, one Mike Allen. Really dug it, Mike, and I hope all the listeners did too. I'm sure they did. You said you used to play live, had to stop, but you loved every show you played with all of your former bandmates. What was your most memorable show and why?
It was in Minneapolis at a venue called the Triple Rock. We were part of this record label called Blue Worm Records, and they had this 10-year anniversary show, and it was professionally filmed and professionally recorded, and there's YouTube videos of it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and it was, I think it captured us at kind of that moment when you know you're kind of running on all four cylinders. It was kind of us at our peak.
And for the sake of listeners and for me looking for it on YouTube, was that a Sunday Flood show?
Yes. Well, I mean, we weren't the only band at the show, but okay. Yeah, I think if you search Sunday Flood Blue Worm, that's probably all you'd need to type in, and some would pop up. But that was kind of our, we were active for 20 years.
Wow.
And those guys are my brothers, even though I don't see them hardly at all anymore. It's that bond, that'll always be there.
Sure.
I'd do anything for any of them, and just a great bunch of dudes, and they shaped me immensely. And just because we're not playing together anymore doesn't mean we're not, still in each other's hearts and minds, and we've kicked around the idea of getting back together, but the logistics of it are just not the same anymore. They've got families, and they're,
oh sure, yeah,
they're 8 hours away from me. That's a big hurdle too. I would like to think one day it would happen, but yeah, playing as we've discussed already, playing live just isn't, at least right now, and I'm this could change. Anything's possible. It's just it's not very high on my priority list at the moment,
sure,
for various reasons. I'm more of a studio guy now. That's what interests me more. The way that playing live did, 15 years ago.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we are brothers in that regard.
Yeah. Right.
What came to mind for me with just the title, Remarkably Unremarkable, mm-hmm. It resonated really loudly for me. First, as an artist, there's always that balance between believing enough in what I'm doing to do it, but without falling into the belief that what I'm doing matters more than it does. But mm-hmm. Also, as a person in recovery, and maybe you can relate to this. Well, there's that joke, how many addicts does it take to screw in a light bulb? And it's just one, but the world has to revolve around them. The whole idea of being remarkably unremarkable resonates for me very loudly with the idea of a self-respect tempered by genuine humility, versus the kind of literal egomania that gets people like us into real trouble. So was that any part of the message of that song, or any part of your thinking?
It definitely is, and you summed it up more eloquently than I did. Just the significant insignificance. It was just kind of, I think part of that title comes from not wanting to blow out of proportion what it was that I did by getting sober. It may have taken me a lot of hard work to do it, but the end result is me just being another functioning human being. Yes. It seemed like this monumental thing for me, and for me personally, yes, it was. But at the end of the day, I just got myself back into reality.
Right.
On
some level, you're right. It's this monumental shift. But on the other hand, it's like, congratulations, you stopped destroying yourself and everyone around.
Yes. How much credit do I really deserve here? It seemed like this huge deal, and to me personally it was, but it was like, okay, well let's keep it real here. What did you do? You just you stop killing yourself, and welcome back to the world. So
yes,
it was me kind of trying to poetically, I guess, and a title kind of sum up. There's something remarkable about it, but also not at the same time, I guess.
Yeah. And it's beautifully poetic that way. Yeah.
And I think there's an element to it of keeping the ego in check.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Yes. Is it fantastic that I'm sober again? Yes, it is. But now it's time to move on and get back to life.
Yeah, that's right.
You know? Yep.
Now, you've been through recovery programs a few times, I understand.
Yep.
And as we acknowledged earlier, it's never done, but this is coming into the territory that I alluded to earlier. A big part of any program is coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity and turning our lives and will over the care of that power. All of the programs that I'm aware of speak of a kind of spiritual awakening. It's different for everyone.
Yep.
For some, it lies in existing faith traditions. For others, it's a less organized kind of personal system of spiritual convictions. I even know, in fact, I was at a meeting that was a strictly atheist AA meeting. What was that process or that experience like for you? And specifically, has that experience changed how you do what you do as an artist in any way?
I fall into that latter category that you just mentioned, where it's more of a personalized spiritual awakening. Because this is another thing that I write about kind of extensively. Because it's like I'm not an atheist. If I had to summarize how I view myself in those contexts, it would be agnostic, probably. Mm-hmm. I was raised Lutheran, but one of the things I write about it was like the step that I think most people, the most common step to have an issue with is the very first one. Right. Some people give up right then and there.
And that's acknowledging powerlessness over the addiction and the unmanageability of our lives.
Yeah, and it's not so much that one. I never had a problem admitting that I was an alcoholic. I was basically, I lucked out in the denial department. Like mm-hmm. I never struggled with the denial aspect of it. Good. It's funny to use luck in that sentence, but it was just like, that was one of those that just came easy to me. Like, no, I'm an alcoholic. I had no problem with that. So I never got hung up on that one, but it was the turning your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him was where I really got tripped up. Because one of the things I write about, it was like, for me, I think the way that I phrased it was like, yes, I believe in a power greater than myself, but so what? Now what? It's like I've never experienced any comfort or any of the things that I've heard other people discuss about what it means or what they experienced when they did that. Because for me, it was like, yes, I believe that there's a power greater than me, many powers greater than me. There's very few things in life that aren't more powerful than little old me.
Sure.
However, that's never really brought me any comfort, and more to the point, it's never been something that I feel like I can give my will and my life over to. It's always just been, yes, clearly there are things much greater than me, but I've always struggled with whatever process that is that you hear other people talk about doing, where they give their will and their life over to it. It's just never been in the cards for me. I can say that I'm doing it, but I don't want to be in a situation where I'm just saying that I'm doing it. You know, I want to feel that I'm doing it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's and I just, for various reasons, just never felt like I was actually doing that. So I talk a lot about in the book about kind of feeling like a fraud for a majority, probably, of the meetings that I would go to, because it was just, I felt like I was kind of saying all the things that people wanted to hear or were expecting me to say. And
oh, yeah. I see.
And yeah, and like, you know, I think after a while, I think that would make anyone a little uncomfortable and question why they continue to take part in a program that they just kind of feel like they're lying their way through. And so I wanted to kind of dissect what was going on there and write about it and see if anyone else felt the same way. And in writing about it, inevitably you're going to find some things out about yourself, and I did, and again, kind of going back to this project basically being a fourth step, maybe that's all it's ever going to be. Maybe this will never see the light of day as a published work. And that isn't what I had hoped for, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, this is what it means to just really do a fourth step without pulling any punches. And, in that regards, even if that's all it was successful in, it will still be a success.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's and I'm not unique in this at all. No. But the higher power aspect of AA has always tripped me up, and many others like me up. And again, I'm far from the only person that has gotten tripped up by that. And that's led to a lot of discussions with some like-minded people and some not so like-minded people, and both are valuable. People that agree with you and people that disagree with you. You can learn just as much from either camp.
Yeah. Well, and like Mark Greider and I discussed, we live in a time when it's so easy to get shoved into your own bubble on any topic. With social media being such a primary tool of interaction with other people. Yeah. No, you're far from the only one to have difficulty with. That's the third step in the program of turning one's life and will over to the care of a higher power. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of another program called Rational Recovery. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Is it anything like Smart Recovery?
Smart Recovery grew out of it. Yeah. Okay. Rational Recovery was based on a book for listeners who are thinking, hey, maybe I could benefit from a 12-step program, but I have a real problem with faith systems and so on. Yeah. A book called Rational Recovery by Jack Trimpey. Back in the 70s, he bottomed out, tried AA, and that was his principal objection, step 3. Yeah. Because he considered himself an atheist. And so developed a whole different approach called the addictive voice recognition technique, where it's similar in principle to how the kind of cognitive behavioral treatment that people with obsessive compulsive disorder often receive, where you learn to say, okay, this inner conflict I'm having right now over checking something, or which coffee mug I'm going to choose this morning affecting my destiny or what have you. I'm going to learn to recognize that as my OCD. Likewise with addiction, I'm going to learn to recognize this addictive voice within me as separate. Yeah. And not me. And I'm going to learn to recognize that voice and put it off to one side and distinguish my sort of true self from that. And it's a powerful thing. And one of the greatest examples from it was where Trimpey actually interviewed people for admission to the program to see if it was going to be helpful. Yeah. And one guy was talking about how he was desperate to change. He couldn't stop drinking. And he said, okay, well, tell me about the last time you drank. I said, well, I was jobless. I was almost out of money. I had enough in my pocket to get some whiskey. And I was wrestling with whether I would do that or not. And he said, so what did you do? Well, I went to the liquor store. And he said, how did you feel when you committed to going to the liquor store? I felt a lot better. Yeah. And he said, think about that for a second. You felt a lot better. Yeah, partly because you knew you were going to get some alcohol. But you felt better before you got it in you. And does that not demonstrate something about the power of your mind?
Yeah.
And he went, wow.
Yeah.
and he said, how did you feel after you drank? Worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to put that out there. It was something that I tried with a number of addictions that didn't really take for me. I found I needed the community of a 12-step program. They don't have community in rational recovery. It's a personal program.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you don't get to hear other people's experience, strength, and hope. And but for anyone listening who might struggle with that, it may be an alternative. And as you know, I think we can agree there are as many routes to recovery as there may be people who struggle with addiction. But this leads me up to a next song of yours we're going to hear. And my next question is therefore, Mike, how do you scare people?
This tackles the estrangement that I spoke of just a short time ago with my siblings. So it's in the recovery sphere, lyric-wise. It's just about what I became through my addiction. It terrified people. It really did, and the repercussions of that are very hard to deal with. But again, that came off that same album where it was kind of me trying to find some level of acceptance in this new life that I created for myself, which was one where, yes, I'm better now, and I'm kind of accepting the new terms of my new reality. My siblings were definitely high up there on my mind when I make the statement, I scare people. It's because I do. There have been years of my life where I literally scared my family, and they, as a result, needed to put some distance between themselves and me. And I was angry and upset and pissed and moaned about it at the time, but looking back, it makes perfect sense. And so it's another song of really just kind of acceptance, and because you can either accept it or you cannot accept it. If given the opportunity, I guess, wouldn't you rather accept it than not accept it?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so much freedom in not resisting things like that.
Yeah. That's basically what that one's about.
Right. Well, with that, I give you the next offering from tonight's guest, the reportedly very scary Mike Allen. You're listening to the No Commercial Potential Show here on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and this is I Scare People. That was I Scare People by tonight's guest on the No Commercial Potential show, Mike Allen. I'm here with Mike now and grateful to be. If you've been listening, I'm sure you are too. The song we just heard, of course, was I Scare People, but I want to ask you, Mike, have you ever scared yourself? And if so, when?
Oh, yeah. Many times. Rock bottom is a scary place for any person to be. That was the closest I'd ever come to death. I was hospitalized, I think, 12 times that year,
Wow.
all with severe delirium tremens. I blew a .63 on one of my many trips to the ER, which frankly I didn't believe was even possible. I mean, that's like twice as much as that can kill you, and so that entire year was basically kind of a near-death experience. Just that whole year was me actively trying to end my life, and that was very scary. Even though there was some acceptance and there was some peace in that acceptance, I'd kind of accepted my fate, and there was some peace in that, but there wasn't a day that went by where I was not terrified about what was happening. It was a level of desperation that I didn't know could exist in this reality. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, and I wouldn't wish it on the worst human being that ever was. And so that, yes, needless to say, yes, I've scared myself plenty.
What scares you the most now? It doesn't have to be recovery related. Just
No, sure. I guess I would like my experiences with that to have, I guess, some kind of lasting effect on people. I think that's kind of my goal now these days, whether it be through the music or through writing. And I try not to dwell on it too much, and I don't, in all honesty. But there are moments when I feel like, maybe just nothing will come from this, and I think what it is just a realization of how much time and blood, sweat, and tears I put into all this, and I guess I want it to matter. And by what I mean by wanting it to matter is just getting into a few people's hands, like I've discussed with you about my music. It's like, yeah, you can say till you're blue in the face that you're just doing it for you, and for the most part that is 100% true, but would it make the experience a little bit richer if I knew it was having some kind of positive effect on someone else? Yes, I absolutely would. Yeah. So I guess in relation to the life I was living in active addiction, I have really nothing to be scared about. I really don't. Life is really quite good these days. I don't have a lot to complain about anymore. And when I did have a lot to complain about, the things I was complaining about were situations that I put myself in.
Completely. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Right, and right down to what you just said about with all that one comes through and continues to come through, the problems of a sober person don't seem anywhere near as frightening as a certain amount of inner peace and self-respect, and with those things, hope and courage blossom. And with each kind of exercise of all of those faculties, there's for me at least, I'm experiencing a growth of confidence, and things are less frightening. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Yes, because it's not hard. It's like a knee-jerk reaction now. It's second nature to kind of compare what you're going through now as to the things that you were going through as a badly addicted person, and they seem trivial very quickly. It's it really is. It's night and day, because it's like when I was at my worst, my biggest fear was not being or not appearing sober enough to be able to get liquor from the clerk at the liquor store, and I knew that if I couldn't get the liquor, I would have a seizure and potentially die. So you compare that to, oh, it's going to be a hellishly busy day at work today.
Right.
You know, it's like there's no comparison. You know, so it's like it's amazing how many things fall right into place when you can get that main demon under control. That one thing that was just kind of the great destroyer, if you will. Once you've figured out a way to subdue it, a lot of things come into perspective. And it's not all sunshine and roses. I mean, life is hard. You know, life is what it is, and it's just I've finally come to a place where I don't have to drink myself into oblivion to get through it anymore. And it's an indescribable feeling being here and having this mindset, because it was not in the cards just a few short years ago. It was this, like, I didn't suspect this was going to be in my future at all, because I didn't think there was a future. So,
right.
You know,
yeah, that seems to be a fairly common experience, and I certainly share it. In that, up until quite recently, there was this abiding sense that there just wasn't any time left. That disaster from which I had never recovered was always just inches away, and so it got to a point where even planning beyond a week for anything, planning beyond the next crisis that I had caused, seemed impossible. And part of the liberation of sobriety is regaining that sense that, yeah, it takes time, but I might just have it. You know, I might just have that time.
Yeah. I mean, going back to my bottom, I was living in 2-day increments. That was about right. That was as far into the future as I was willing to give myself. Like I would go to the liquor store, and pretty much every time I left it, kind of in the back of my head, thinking that was going to be the last time that I was going to be in that store, because what I just purchased there was going to be the final lethal dose, if you will. And so it's but I know exactly what you mean. It's like before I had reached that level of drinking, where I was still kind of a functioning alcoholic. It was I was working, I was paying my way, I was, for all intents and purposes, like I said, a functioning alcoholic, but I was still creating so much chaos and destruction, and they were all of my own making, you know. And no one can live like that forever. They'll either stop and get their life together, or they'll do what I did initially, which is just drink harder to the point where they're actively trying to end their life. So it's like, because for me at the time, the two options were face what you've done, face the destruction that you've caused, or continue to bury it in the alcohol. And I chose continue to bury it in the alcohol, to the point that I consciously made the decision to do it until I was dead. So it was having somehow moved out of that. Yeah, all those same elements to recovery are still there. You have to look back. You have to claim responsibility for all the havoc. Yeah. And part of it is just that acceptance of the fact that some things might not ever be the same, whether it be with family members, friends, employers, you name it. There's probably not a single aspect of your life that's ever going to be what it was before you burned all your bridges and destroyed a lot of elements of life through your addiction. But there is some sense of liberation in that acceptance. It's as hard as it is, knowing that you've destroyed relationships, there is some element to it that's just acknowledging it and accepting it and putting it on the shelf and realizing that that's what that is now. Yeah. And you can stare at it up there on the shelf and realize that it's not making you drink now.
That's right.
There's a lot of power in that.
Well, that's the beginning of the Serenity Prayer, right? Or whatever variation we have of it. The serenity to accept what we can't change, and the inability to do that, for me, very much a driver of addiction. The unwillingness to accept life on its own terms and the realities of it. But well, here's a less scary question. Is there a particular musical genre you identify with most closely as an artist? And if so, what is that genre?
I'd say industrial, I guess, would be what I could see myself being kind of lumped into. Especially with a lot of my more recent stuff, it's gotten progressively heavier and froggy almost. And I never really like set out to sound this way or that. It's just with I've never really written about happy topics. I've never written like a love song, for example. It's always been about just darker.
Right.
Kind of the darker recesses of kind of where your mind can find itself. That's where I draw inspiration for lyrics, and one thing I am conscious of is making kind of the sonic approach or the instruments or the effects used matching kind of that level of intensity. So for me, writing about addiction and mental illness, I mean, those aren't very lighthearted topics. So in my head, that requires kind of a darker, heavier, crunchier, distorted sound. To me, it just, the sound of the guitars, the sound of percussion, I like them to match the kind of darker themes explored in the lyrics.
Sure. Yeah.
So
and that's quite clear in the pieces of yours that I've heard. And it's interesting because you anticipated my very next question in that other than addiction and mental health, you've eliminated love songs, and I understand that there is political and social commentary in your work. But other than those areas, what subjects inspire your work as an artist?
Really, just going out and living life and having encounters and kind of seeing the world kind of take place around me. Those are kind of my biggest inspirations, really, because it's like I just kind of allow what's happening out in the world to kind of shape what I do when I sit in front of a computer or pick up a guitar. Kind
of a musical observer of your time and place.
A little bit. I've mentioned to you a couple times how fascinated I was with your interview with Mark Ryder. You touched on kind of the idea of, even though it's like a one-man band, there's somehow kind of like this co-creator.
Wow, you really listen to the show.
Oh, yeah.
Someone actually listens.
Every word, man. I was glued to that episode. Listening to you guys talk was truly fascinating. And it's kind of like I go out into the world and I live my life, and that's kind of what's writing these songs. I go out into the world and my brain processes the things that happen, and the end result from a musical standpoint is the songs that you're listening to. It's kind of, when it comes to music, more often than not, when I'm done with the song, I feel like I've kind of discovered the song, not so much written it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to get really, hyper technical, like every combination of notes that could possibly exist is already out there. You know what I mean? It's just basic math, really. But it's like, so it's just, it kind of comes down to the combination of notes that resonate with your kind of unique frequency that kind of makes it your song. That's kind of the way I've always looked at it.
Right.
So me just kind of going out into the world and kind of absorbing life, and then coming back and I kind of recycle it and regurgitate it out into music. So it's like there's something else. This is another thing you guys talked about. It's like I'm very aware of, like, even though it's just me, I'm very aware of like some other presence at play. And like I said, I'm agnostic. I'm not atheist. It's like I just feel kind of, I believe in the existence of a soul, and I consider my music to basically be that soul. And it's so it's like you guys talked about kind of like you get to a point in the song where like you finish one and you're just like, holy shit, did I actually just do that? It's not there's no element of it even remotely that's like you patting yourself on the back, but it's just it's a moment of like, did that actually just come from me?
Yeah, it's like it couldn't.
Yeah, it's like there's this moment of disbelief where it's almost like you feel like an imposter almost, because it's like that. Yeah, sure, I'm the one that did this, but it also came from somewhere else. And I think all music is kind of an extension of the person's soul. I mean, that's my belief. And and you know, what is your soul? It's kind of otherworldly, and that's kind of what I'm talking about in my email to you. Or it's just kind of it's my connection to the unknowable. It's like there are far more things in this world and universe that I'll never understand. But you know, the closest I'll ever come to having an understanding of it is what happens, I guess, when I write and record music. It's been my therapy. It's been my kind of connection to the unseen, I guess, and it's a pretty remarkable thing, and a lot of work goes into it, as you well know, and it's can drive you damn near crazy if you're not careful. And but it's highly rewarding in the end if you can do something that really just kind of makes you go, wow, I actually just did that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And becomes increasingly a much bigger deal when you're able to do that after having conquered your demons. Because like it's you know, when I played in bands, like drinking was a big part of it, and so much so that it was basically part of like your stage presence. And like, so when I first got sober, I was still playing in my band, and like when I couldn't have that aspect of it, I just like, there were times when it actually just felt like I was up there wearing a straitjacket. Like I just didn't know, it was so foreign to me to be doing that sober. So to be able to do some of the things now that I'm doing, which is some of the work that I'm most proud of, and the reason I'm probably most proud of it is because I'm doing it sober, and I'm doing it with a clear head. I'm not doing it with any kind of external padding, if you will. No, there aren't any drugs involved. Some of my much earlier stuff is hard to listen to because I can listen back to it and I'm like, oh yeah, I was drunk during that, or yeah, I could have played that way better had I not had 5 rum and cokes in me at the time.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
So some of that work I can look back on and be relatively proud of, but more often than not, I'm like, oh yeah, I was half in the bag when I recorded that, I can tell. So to be able to do what I'm doing now sober makes it all the more easy to be, you know, a little bit more proud of it. And
you're proud of everything, really.
Yeah, yes,
yeah.
And
because you were there.
I was definitely just completely present for the process, whereas in the past I wasn't. And but no, it really was fascinating to listen to you guys talk about that, because it's very difficult to kind of express that to someone who hasn't necessarily felt the same way about music. But yeah, I don't know, creating music or listening to other people's music for me, I guess, especially music that just really hits you right here, you know, that's the closest, in my opinion, that I could ever get to God, really. You know, it's just that there's something so profound about it, what music can do. Yeah. What music can do to you, there's really no way to put it into a simple sentence. It's pretty miraculous. So
yeah, I'm ever grateful for the opportunity and the ability to make it, to make music. And you know, I read something a little while ago about how that activity will actually activate more areas of the brain than virtually than most any other activity that a person can engage in. Yeah. You know, and still remain in control of their faculties anyway. Right. But yeah, it's a very, very powerful experience, and to me does connect with something transcendent. I mean, I'm not going to dive into the details of my spiritual awakening, but I feel very deeply what you're saying about the connection with all of that through making music. You said you're 44 now. When you're 88, what do you hope to look back on as an artist and as a person?
I think as an artist, I think it's very important to most artists, perhaps not all, but for most, to just stay true to themselves and not jump on any bandwagon or try to sound like somebody else just because they're successful and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of as I've discussed already, I have no reason to suspect that I would ever do that because I've all but given up on making a career at this. So there's literally no reason for me to not stay true to myself. So I don't think that's something I'm going to have a hard time doing just because of I guess where I'm at in life and my expectations. It's something that I'll continue to do, and like we've discussed, I would love it if some people enjoyed it along the way, and so that's that as an artist, I guess. Just continuing, if I can look back and know that I never veered off course, the course of just being me, I'll consider that to have been a relatively successful go at it.
Absolutely.
And in life, I guess, kind of also, like we've discussed, this music venture can really take up a lot of a person's time, mental space. So I'd like to be able to look back on life and know that it didn't eclipse a lot of other things. I think anyone, I just want to live life to the fullest, and I've got a lot of, I'm making up for a lot of lost time with the addiction having claimed so many years of my life. I feel like I'm kind of working overtime at, trying to get as much music out as possible and live life to the fullest. So it's, my days are busy, let's put it that way, but everyone's are pretty much.
That's beautiful and an aspiration of mine. It's funny, and I feel like we're having much more of an open conversation than an interview, and I'm really enjoying it.
No, that's great.
I had an experience with making music at the opposite end, where you just said you feel like you're making up for lost time and getting as much out as you can in your new life. For me, I felt compelled to get as much out as I possibly could because I have this conviction that there wasn't time left.
Mm-hmm.
And so, consequently, released about 110 songs in 6 years.
Wow.
Because I was sure that was going to be, anytime soon was going to be the end.
Yes.
And
yes.
I just want to say it's inspirational to hear you at the other side, being motivated by something brighter and warmer and more powerful than that, the attraction rather than the compulsion. It's very inspirational to me.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that. I think it's coming from a very similar place. It's like, I know that feeling well of being like this disease is going to claim me, and it can be anything really, but it's just like, and just wanting to get it all out while you still have the time. But the funny thing about that is, though, I still feel that in sobriety too. I kind of adapted a way of living shortly after I got sober, with just kind of the acceptance that any day of the week could be my last day on earth.
Sure.
So it's like, it doesn't, and that comes with, getting sober comes with a lot of harsh realities, and it's like ones that you would have just as soon avoid in your addiction. So it's just like, chances aren't, I guess, great that my final day is today or tomorrow, but it's like, it's entirely possible. You know what I mean? So it's just that reminder is all I need to just really strive to get everything I can out of me while I'm here, because even if I do live to be 88, that's still not that much time,
right?
It's like so it's just a matter of kind of seizing the day, really. And,
right. And each and every one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, the last of your songs we're going to hear tonight is another cover, bookending the program, Burning Down the House by the Talking Heads. And I love your covers.
Thanks.
You really breathe new life into some timeless classics in your own voice. And as I said before, that takes incredible courage, I know from experience. I loved especially what you did with a guilty pleasure of mine, though. I got to talk about this. You mentioned it before. Groove is in the Heart by D.
Yeah.
Light. First of all, hats off for tackling that as a male singer. I think a lot of male performers shy away from singing songs by women, and there's no earthly reason for it. And kudos for that and for that song. I'm a fan, and I'm going to promote the hell out of your original work and the covers for the next while with glee. But back to Burning Down the House. Can I read anything into your choice of that song for the Variations album, or was it just one you really liked?
It was just one that I grew up loving. I think that song came out in 1983, maybe.
Oh,
and my first memory of it is it's either the video for it, which is a classic video, or when I don't know if you're an 80s movie buff.
Yeah, right.
Comedies in particular, but it was in Revenge of the Nerds.
You're right. Yes.
And so that's one from earlier childhood that I remember just thinking was just fascinating, and some of the lyrics actually kind of fit thematically too into some of the stuff I'm writing about now, where it's just like people, I can't recite them verbatim off the top of my head, but something about kind of people, people preferring to get anything and everything from their TV set, which is a lyric that didn't seem profound to me as a child, obviously, but as I've grown older, can't help but feel now the way I'm assuming David Byrne did when he wrote those lyrics.
Right.
So it was I don't know, just one of the all-time great classic songs, and I knew a long time ago that if I ever did remakes, that was going to be one of them. So
absolutely, yeah. All right, well, let's get to it then. You're listening to the No Commercial Potential Show here on Cosmos Astrum Radio. I'm your host, Brad Wallace, and this is Mike Allen's amazing cover of the Talking Heads classic, Burning Down the House.
Lie, man, or down, reek, I
That was Mike Allen's fantastic rendition of Burning Down the House by the Talking Heads. And wow, what a fresh take on that. It's, to me, like David Bowie and Nine Inch Nails got back together for one more duet and called themselves Mike Allen. Well done.
I don't think a more flattering thing has ever been said to me, sir. Appreciate that.
Well, entirely sincere. I'm frankly blown away by the energy and authenticity of what you do, Mike. And I'm really thrilled to have spent this evening talking with you. I see that 2023 has already been kind of a busy year for you, artistically, and really looking forward to your book. Do you have any next projects in the works?
I do. I've got a new album of originals that I just finished. It's called Lesser Fictions, and that'll be up on Spotify and Apple here in about 2 weeks. And I am working on some more remakes. I just finished a remake by Bjork.
Oh wow!
And
there's some something well above and beyond ordinary gumption, my friend.
Well, if you're gonna tackle a Bjork song, you better it's obviously I don't have near the same range, so I had to take some creative license with the actual vocal approach. But she is another one that has just been truly inspiring for going on 25 years. She's been a big influence of mine, and the song I did of hers, it's called Enjoy. It's on her second solo album, and I'm going to be releasing that as a single here any day now. I'm just waiting to get my master back, because process is I finish mixing it, producing it. Once that's done, I sent it to my guy. He's in the UK, and he's a brilliant audio engineer, and he does all my mastering, so I just gotta wait for him to get it back to me, and then
great.
submit it to DistroKid, and in a short time after that it's up and available. So that's the next thing that'll pop up as a new release on my Spotify, and then shortly after that it'll be my album of originals. Again, it's called Lesser Fictions, and so I'd say within maybe 2 weeks both of those will pop up on my page, and got some more remakes I want to do, and that's kind of my speed these days. I do 5 originals followed by 7 remakes, and kind of the logic there is kind of going back to what we've talked about, where it's just like you don't want to go kind of too deep into that creative realm. So like doing remakes, you can still be creative without kind of the madness of writing the song.
Yes. Right, exactly.
So you can kind of keep that creative muscle working without kind of the madness that sometimes is attached to actually writing it, is kind of my theory on that. So,
absolutely.
And they're just a lot of fun, and that's, I'll be honest, fun, just the very concept of fun is something I've just kind of rediscovered in this sober life. So it's been quite a ride, and
Well, so, I want to make sure I plug that. So you heard it here first, folks. The Lesser Fictions album by your friend of mine, Mike Allen, is to be looked for in the very near future. And you've already put out an impressive body of work with, in my view, integrity for days, and a sound all your own. Is there any advice you'd care to impart to any other indie artists out there who might be listening, and with my numbers I stress might be listening, that could encourage them?
Yeah, I think maybe going back to something I was just talking to just a little bit ago, is it's ultimately going to be a more rewarding experience if you're just doing it for the right reasons. And I think what I mean by the right reasons is, going back to what I was saying, is just it's got to be coming from you. It's got to be, that's the only way to ensure that it's genuine. There might not be big dollar signs in the future for you if you take that route. I think a majority of the population kind of wants their predictable pop radio friendly songs, and there's a time and a place for those. But my only advice would be if you want to take any from me, would be to just stay true to yourself, because that's the kind of thing that you're going to look back on, and I think if you're anything like me, be most proud of.
To thine own self be true.
Absolutely. Yeah. There it is.
Well, Mike, it's been wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your time and talents with me tonight, and thank you for coming on and furnishing the opportunity for us to discuss struggles faced by so many all around the world, but that are too seldom discussed. I really hope you'll come back, and I count you as a friend.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad, so much. It was a genuine pleasure to get to know you over this and the last couple weeks as well. And I would be more than happy and honored to be back again anytime. And let's keep in touch.
Wonderful.
Just outside of all this.
Absolutely. You know? I look forward to that. Yeah, it's been wonderful getting to know you as well. That's it for tonight, everyone. I hope if you're struggling with addiction or any kind of issues in your mental health, you'll realize you're not alone. For one thing, it's never been harder in human history to be a human being on planet Earth. More importantly, though, there is help. Whatever you're going through, wherever you are, however hard life might be right now, it takes time, but it can get better, and you don't need to do it alone. You've been listening to the No Commercial Potential Show on Cosmos Astrum Radio, and this is Brad Wallace saying, it gets better, but be careful out there.